All right, guys, let's go to the phone lines. Bring in our good friend Dave Birkett, Detroit Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, freep.com, and author of Detroit Lions, an illustrated timeline. Get that anywhere books are sold. Dave Birkett, how are you, my friend?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Hey, Dave. Doing good. We just had Joik Bell in studio. What is your best Joik Bell memory?
Oh man, Jake was a good guy to talk to in the locker room. I mean, the first story that always jumps out when I hear his name is how he used to work Lions camp as a student at Wayne State or a player at Wayne State, and then he ended up playing for the team. So always funny how some of those things come full circle, and it's in some ways it's a similar story to John Morton, the new offensive coordinator, who was grew up around here and now he's back coaching the team. So I always love those stories when it comes like that.
Coming full circle, no doubt. Dave, let me just hit you with the big question that has been a topic for a lot of people, me included, since the Super Bowl, and that is when you see Philadelphia's defense dominate like they did and suffocate Patrick Mahomes the way they did, automatically on that night I'm thinking to myself, okay, Myles Garrett, meet Aiden Hutchinson. What do you make of that kind of talk from fans, from people, from Detroit Lions fans? How likely it is, how unlikely it is? Just what do you make of the whole conversation and what the Eagles defense kind of showed Lions fans about how you win a game like that?
Yeah, I think it's not just this game, right? I mean, when Mahomes lost a couple of years ago, it was sort of the same recipe. A good defensive line got after him and made life difficult on him. And, you look at the quarterbacks the Lions face next year, and I think, having another pass rusher to pair with Aiden Hutchinson would make life a whole lot easier when you're trying to beat Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow and, Matthew Stafford, all these quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels that the Lions have to face on the road next season, Lamar Jackson, right? A host of some of the best names. So I do think that's the recipe for, success in the NFL defensively. From the Lions standpoint, I don't know if they can pull it off. Look, I was talking to a couple of people at the Super Bowl about, this, and the reality is that whether it's in Cleveland or elsewhere, Myles Garrett's going to get a new contract this year, and Max Crosby's going to get a new deal probably, and, Aiden Hutchinson might get paid, and Trey Hendrickson, and, Micah Parsons, like all these top pass rushers are in line for new money. And that number is probably, the first guy that gets a deal done, it's probably going to be, $36 million a year, somewhere around there. And it's just going to go up. And, by the time if Aiden waits because, he doesn't need to do it right away, he's going to get $40 million a year. So I don't know if the Lions can afford to have two defensive ends on contracts that, pay them each, let's just call it $40 million. And I don't think they'd be, opposed if it could work out. And in fact, I think if Max Crosby was available, I think that'd be the guy that they'd prefer. But, to pair with Hutch. But I just don't know financially if that's something the Lions can do.
Dave, and we really haven't, it hasn't been a situation where the Lions have been this close to a Super Bowl, obviously, before, maybe in our lifetimes, but is there a thought that the Lions are one player away? And if the Lions are one player away, whether it's a defensive end, a defensive, whoever it is, whoever that one player is Brad Holmes the type of general manager to, I don't want to say F them picks, but F them picks and go do whatever you got to do to get that one player?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. And I do think he would do that if he thought there was that player out there that, would put them over the top or make that big of a difference. And that's why I wouldn't discount the talk of, adding one of these elite, pass rushers, because I could see him do that. I don't think he's scared of that move. I don't think as good as he's drafted, I don't think he would be afraid to give up picks. And in fact, he's moved up to get guys, right? The deals that he's made to get Jamison Williams and, Zadarius Smith obviously wasn't a high pick, but, he hasn't been afraid to deal some of those picks. So I don't think he would have any problem doing it if everything worked out both from a player standpoint, a fit standpoint, and what it meant long term, cap wise for the team. So, and what was the first part of that, Ryan? I'm sorry.
just are they one player away? Is there a belief that they're one player away? The one thing about that with Joikin here, you almost forget that they did have 23 guys on IR. It's almost like they're going to get all these guys back, and it's going to feel like a new team a little bit, like a free agent signing almost, with all the players they get back.
Well, look, I think, certainly I and probably you guys in there and a lot of fans out there listening, like we maybe look at it a little bit different. Like, yeah, go get them. That one guy could be the piece that puts you over the top. I'm all for that. I always have been. When it comes to acquiring some of that elite talent. But, Brad has always sort of, distanced himself from that one player away. And our window of contention is now. And, I think a lot of us can look at the way the Lions salary is structured and their salary cap and all the money that's coming due in 2026 and say, man, there could be some issues down the road, and you might as well, take a big swing now. I don't, the sense that I have is the Lions don't look at it that way. They think they're going to be here and be contending for a long, long time. And so I think they push back a little bit on that being one player away. But I don't think that would preclude them from making a deal either.
Dave, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Just a quick question. Last year there was tons and tons and tons of momentum for the Detroit Lions, tons of excitement. They win 12 games in a row. They win 15 games out of 17. They break the franchise record. The fans showed up in droves to come see the Detroit Lions. Like the momentum and the noise and the crowd and the cheering, it was everywhere. Losing to Commanders in the first round of the playoffs for the Lions, at least, because they got a bye. How does that energy look next season going into the season? Like, are you going to see the same excitement around the game, fans paying all this money because the ticket prices are going to go up? Like, will you see the same level of excitement? And if not, what week can you get back to it, or what does the record have to be for you to get back to that excitement? Because we all have to admit that excitement last year, not a lot of fans, not a lot of cities, not a lot of arenas see that level of excitement for an NFL franchise. Can they get back to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you that that was pretty unusual, and I sort of have my doubts that they will get back to that, at least on that level of what it was like the last 2 years. And look, it was 2 years ago. I think it was maybe people thought, hey, the Lions are a little bit ahead of schedule, and look at how great they are. They beat the Chiefs, and maybe this could be a special year, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. And then they came so close in 2023 that last year everyone just assumed it's their year, we're going to the Super Bowl, and you win 15 games, and it looked like it was going to stack up that way. And now I think there will be more of a, okay, we've done that, show it, prove it to me before we get to that level with our belief. And that's not to say they wouldn't be confident or shouldn't be confident, fans that is, in what the Lions can be. But I do think that you can only sustain that level of excitement and anticipation for so long. At some point, it's more about, I want to see what happens on the field. And, yeah, we won 15, but that doesn't matter anymore. We got to do it in the playoffs. So I don't know what would, get them back to that level. Maybe if, all of a sudden they're winning all these road games and everyone's staying healthy, and you knock off Mahomes and Hurts and, Lamar, all those teams on the road, and you're going to win 13 or 14 games again, then I'm sure people will be excited about the number one seed and everything that, comes with it. But I think a lot of fans are just going to say, hey, wake me in the playoffs, because that's what I need to see to believe it.
It's funny you say that, because I think one of the things that I mentioned after the end of the season, Matt had asked, what did this season mean to you? And I kind of thought that it told me that the regular season is meaningless. It does feel like a little bit of just get in.
Yeah.
I did want to mention something just to piggyback off of what Braylon said about momentum and this lack of momentum that is with Detroit Lions fans right now, and perhaps a little bit, maybe even amongst the players or the organization, maybe not, but certainly among the fans with the playoff loss and the coordinators and the coaches and all of these things. How much more momentum would be lost? Forget about Myles Garrett not coming to Detroit, but what if he goes to Chicago or Green Bay or Minnesota, or heaven forbid Washington, who I think is going to be a tremendous team, formidable team. I've heard rumors about the Eagles trying to do this. So, Mass being from New York is always talking about Red Sox and Yankees, and even if the Yankees didn't need a player, they would sign the player just so the Red Sox didn't get him. Yeah. I mean, do you kind of feel like that, whether it's Garrett or Crosby or whoever, if these players are going to be on the move, what do you got to do to make sure that you're not competing against them twice a year?
Yep.
Yeah, no, maybe a little bit. I mean, but I think, the Lions have a good enough roster and a good enough team that they're going to be in the mix no matter what. The only thing that's going to hold them back is another slate of injuries. They have some, there'll be some hurdles with the coordinator changes and some things they have to get used to, but the roster itself is good enough that they should be one of the best teams in the NFL. Now, look, if all of a sudden you're playing Myles Garrett twice a year and he's in Chicago and he makes a big play to beat you, I do think people will say, man, it could have been us, right? And maybe that goes for whatever team that he goes to, that will be in the back of people's heads. But the Lions aren't going to sit pat. They're going to make some moves this offseason, and I think they'll do.
Maz, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my earpiece. Do we lose Dave?
I think we lost him. He'll call right back.
Okay.
Let's wait for him to call back.
But either so, Maz, and that's part of what he said, too, just about the momentum of seeing him in another uniform. How would you like to see him in Chicago?
I would. You talk about what the Lions are doing, what the Chicago Bears are doing over there, how they're getting better this season. They're in the division. They're a division rival and opponent. Yeah, you don't want to see him over there. That's already a really good defense. We've seen that defense the last 2 years. That defense is even tougher in December. Like, when we played that defense in December 2 years ago, we lost. When we played them last year, it was a struggle. So you had Myles Garrett in there with Jalen Johnson in the back end and the players they have, Edmonds. That's a tough roster, man. You don't want to see it.
Whether it's Myles Garrett or Max Crosby
Montez
or Montez Sweat or any of these bigger names, and I'm specifically talking about Max Crosby and Myles Garrett. Like, why would you keep these guys? What is the reason to keep them?
It's time to rebuild for those teams.
Because Cleveland has said we are not trading Myles Garrett. And they've repeatedly said they're not trading Myles Garrett. And ESPN was talking about this morning how even internally they are saying they are not trading Myles Garrett. Ugh. So is that a little bit of posturing? Are they waiting for somebody to knock their socks off with a deal?
Well, you've heard Myles when he spoke at the Super Bowl. They asked him, hey, what if they don't trade you? And he'd be like, well, that wouldn't be good. He says, what's your choice? He's like, I want to get traded. I want to play for a winner. There's only a certain amount of time that we're able to play this game. And I just don't see our team competing. I got to go somewhere where it means something to play. So I think he'll push for it. And look what they did last year. They who'd they let walk? Callahan. Bill Callahan was their O-line coach. Great coach. They let him go to go coach with his kid in Tennessee. His kid, Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans. And Cleveland said, okay, you're his father. We understand it's a good thing. Go on over there. I'm hoping they'll do the same thing for Myles Garrett and take care of him and trade him to Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's also is
Dave back, by the way?
No.
Not yet?
It's important to try to look at it that way. You're absolutely right. We keep looking like he's going to go to the Commanders or the Bears or the Packers or hopefully
he said he's back on, by the way.
The Detroit Lions, but Cleveland does not have to let him go.
He's on, he said.
Dave, are you there? Can you?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you
Okay,
guys
I got you. Okay. We're just talking about, Cleveland has said the general manager there internally and externally has said we're not trading Myles Garrett. It's just not going to happen. And maybe they're just, posturing and waiting for a sweetheart deal. But whether it's Max Crosby or anybody else, I mean, why do those teams hang on to guys like that when they're seemingly so far away?
Right.
You could rebuild in
especially Cleveland when they gave all those picks away to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, you got to restock, as they say, right, Dave?
Yeah, well, somebody told me this, before. I don't even remember who this was a long time ago. But would you rather have picks or really good players? Would you rather have the cap space or good players? And I mean, Myles Garrett's a Hall of Famer, and Max Crosby's a Hall of Famer. Like, these guys are the best in the NFL at their position, at a position that is really hard to find, guys that do everything well consistently. And that's why they hang on to him, right? There are only so many guys of that caliber in the league. The Lions have one of them in Aiden Hutchinson. And, the Raiders and the Browns and the Cowboys, they're fortunate to have elite pass rushers too. And so, maybe Myles Garrett wants out, but if you're Cleveland, like, A, it's going to hurt you cap-wise to do it, and that's not going to help you build a winner. And then B, maybe you just think, hey, this will blow over, and even no matter what he says, like, money smooths over a lot of things. So, if we can strike a new deal that's paying him that $36-38 million a year, all of a sudden he's good to go, and he can be a cornerstone player for us as we try to find a quarterback and build for the future.
Hey, Dave, Lions have quite a number of free agents as well, Carlton Davis being one of them. What players do you think they must re-sign, or do you think they will re-sign?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, offensively, Zeitler's obviously the best free agent. They have some decisions to make there because Christian Mahogany looks ready to start.
Yep.
Do you start him at right guard? Do you move him to left guard? Do you re-sign Zeitler and let Graham Glasgow go? I mean, I think there's that's a whole big discussion that they have to have about the makeup of the the entire interior line there. Defensively, like Carlton Davis, if it was me, I don't know that I would feel comfortable with Terrion Arnold as my number one cornerback going into next season. And I think he did some good things this year. He didn't always play great, but you look at some of the underlying metrics, like his separation window and things like that. Like, he was the best cornerback on the team in some of those metrics. So I think there's some upside there, but for a Super Bowl caliber team, you need another cornerback that's at least on that level. So Davis is an intriguing guy because he was playing well, but whether it's the Jets with Aaron Glenn or the Jaguars, he's going to have some interest out there. So that number might get a little too expensive for the Lions. But out of the defensive free agents, I think he and Derek Barnes are probably the top two, defensive free agents. Levi Onwuzurike is another guy. The Lions wanted to re-sign him before the season. He wanted to play the year out. He had a really good year, proved he could be healthy. Didn't have huge sack numbers, but played well enough that he'll get paid from someone. So I think those are the top three defensive free agents the Lions have to worry about.
How about, before I ask you about the draft, Ennis Rakestraw, who was the second-round pick, and, of course, we know Philly got Cooper DeJean a few picks prior to that. What's his deal? I know he was hurt. Did you get it? Did you see enough of him, watching practice or whatever? What's this kid's deal?
Yeah, you tell me. I mean, It's really that's another one that you can't. I mean, it'd be nice if he was ready to play a starting role last year, and maybe you're hoping he is if you're the Lions. But you can't. If you're a Super Bowl contending team, you can't go in expecting that he's going to be a starter for you. Like, if it happens, great, and he would play the slot, and that would mean Amik Robertson would play outside. But again, I think you need another starting caliber cornerback, and then you open it up. And cornerback is, I don't know that there's a more injured position in the NFL than defensive back, just because of the size of those guys and the physicality they have to play with, and the speed and change of direction. So, Ennis Rakestraw is going to see the field next year. It's just a matter of in what role after the Lions offseason settles.
All right, let's hear it now. What are the top two draft picks, position-wise, do you think they go after?
Man, draft already?
Yeah, it's February.
Where's your mock?
Yeah,
Dave?
go,
Where's
Dave.
your mock?
We're waiting, Dave.
No, you know what the thing is? I probably will do a mock next week. I'm wrapping up this John Morton story that I'm writing, and Braylon, I may give you a buzz to get your thoughts on him. You were with him for a year, but I'll probably have to do a mock next year. So it's look, if you're just you guys know as well as I do, right? Brad Holmes just goes, best player available, and he's done a pretty good job of that. So I don't know that we can pin a position to it, but the positions I think they need most, and it's supposed to be a pretty deep year at edge rusher, defensive line. If you can get an edge rusher, a defensive tackle, somebody who can come in and be a part of that rotation, I think that's a must depending on what you do in free agency to get someone else up front somewhere. And then, you know what? The offensive line is, look, the Eagles had the best offensive line in football this year, I think. They won the Super Bowl. They did a great job protecting Jalen Hurts, running the ball in the playoffs. The Chiefs, why they didn't win as much as anything was because that offensive line fell apart. So if I'm the Lions, I want to make sure that somewhere, you know, I'm grabbing another young offensive lineman that I think can be a part of my rotation or eventually be a starter for me in the near future.
You got Mahogany and Manu waiting.
Well, we'll see what Manu is. I mean, you know, Gio's
better be something.
He hasn't played. Yeah, he was far away. You're right. I mean, you trade up to get him.
Yeah.
You trade a future third-round pick. Like, you expect that at some point he's going to be in the mix too. But, you know, he's a year away, I still think, you know, and maybe he can contend for that sixth offensive lineman spot next year. He comes back and the game's moving a little slower and, you know, everybody can dream on a Jordan Mailata and think that Manu could be the same sort of thing. But, you know, that's a once-in-a-generation pick the Eagles had. So
No kidding.
I would temper those expectations a little bit, not, you know, having not seen him play a whole lot since the end of training camp.
Hey, Dave, last one from me, and it is about that offensive line. It has been the bread and butter for the Detroit Lions throughout the last years of success. What about Zeitler? Do you think he'll re-sign with the Lions? Will there be a retirement? What is going on with him? Also, you know, I was surprised last year. I did not realize that Frank Ragnow was seriously contemplating retirement last year. I was kind of surprised when Brad Holmes came to the podium and really talked about that. And if he contemplated retirement last year, is there a contemplation this year about Frank Ragnow and potentially hanging him up?
All right, so let's be clear on the Ragnow thing first. I think the questions were more by us in the media than they were internally with him. You know,
Okay.
He said something at the end of the year like, man, I am, you know, I got to sit back and kind of reassess where he was. And everyone, you know, read into that like, wow, you know, he's been hurt all this time and what happens? And, you know, I certainly asked the question publicly of Brad Holmes, and I think that maybe fueled it, you know, but that wasn't to insinuate that Frank was like borderline retiring.
Fair enough.
Frank this year said this was the healthiest he's been. Look, I don't know that he's going to play. He's not going to play another 10 years, right? Like injuries, health. He's got young kids, but I don't think you're in danger of losing him in the next 12 months. So,
Thank God.
I think Frank will be fine. You know, Zeitler, talking to him late in the year, it sounded like he was, you know, looking forward to playing another season. And so, I think there's certainly a possibility the Lions could bring him back. But again, you know, what does that mean for Graham Glasgow? What does that mean for Christian Mahogany? I think there's a lot of decisions that, you know, one domino will make some other things fall. So there's a lot of things they have to sort through here in the coming weeks before free agency.
Great stuff, my man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Wait, one quick final question. Matthew Stafford get traded? Do you think Matthew Stafford's going to get traded?
No, I don't. I mean, I think, you know, look, the Rams they've got a decent, you know, young roster there too, but, you know, who are they going to have at quarterback if they trade away Matthew Stafford? You know, they'll come to some sort of conclusion with the contract, and I think he'll still be playing for the Rams next year. The Lions will still be facing him when they go to L.A. on the road.
The great Dave Birkett. Check him out. Freep.com, Detroit Free Press Lions beat reporter, and, of course, the author of Detroit Lions, an illustrated timeline anywhere books are sold. Dave, thanks so much. We'll be looking forward to that mock draft next week.
There you go. Next Sunday. Keep your eyes out.
We got you, man.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Dave.
it.
Appreciate your patience.
It's so funny. Like,